लो जी, थैंक यू ऑल। 200 जैसे डबल सेंचुरी हो गई है एंड द मेंबर्स आर ज्वाइनिंग विद इन 5 मिनट। वी विल सी दैट इट विल रीच टू 400। तो मैं अश्विनी जिंदल ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट एसोसिएशन एज वेल एज वॉइस ऑफ सीए वोका welcome you all on this fourth day of our specialized GST refresher course, especially designed for the practitioners, so that the problems related to GST practice in day to day we feel we observed and we handle. It may be related to ITC, RCM, or what turnover will be taxable, non-taxable, exempt, or will not be included in the turnover definition, and litigation part related to notices 73, 74, ASMT notices, then appeals, tribunal, and above all, we will interact with the most sought after speaker, practitioner, and name and fame in the Punjab and Haryana High Court, especially for direct as well as indirect taxes. He has handled many big clients, and he represented many big clients, rather many big issues related to GST. One of them I am witnessed. It is related to taxation of RC charges by the Punjab state government, Punjab state GST authorities, that RC charges will be subject to GST. Whatever it is the pure agent service we are collecting and depositing to the RTO. And Sandeep ji is the one who won that judgment and stayed all the matters. And on the basis of Sandeep ji's judgment, many professionals has been benefited due to his judicial pronouncement in one of his clients. And many such cases he has also pleaded in the Honorable High Court as well as in the Supreme Court. Today he will tell us what has evolved in the 8 years of GST in the Honorable High Courts. कहाँ कहाँ पे जो पैचेस थे, जो गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से मतलब उसको फिक्स ना करने की बजाय अनफिक्स किया गया बाय द स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स, तो संदीप जी जैसे लर्नर्ड प्रोफेशनल्स ने उनको रीफिक्स किया इन द हाई कोर्ट, सो दैट हमारे प्रोफेशनल्स और जितने भी क्लाइंट्स हैं जो लॉ को सही इंटरप्रेट कर सकें और जो उसकी ट्रू सेंस है उसको वो आगे मतलब समझा पाए कि कैसे मतलब कहते हैं लॉ को डिजाइन किया है ब्यूटीफुली, तो वो ब्यूटीफुली रहे, स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स वगैरह उनको मतलब डैमेज ना कर दें। तो संदीप जी की कारण ही आज हम उन केसेस को प्ली कर पाए हैं पंजाब एंड हरियाणा हाई कोर्ट में एंड अदर हाई कोर्ट्स एज वेल। टुडे वी विल हैव द होल सेशन on the latest judicial pronouncement held in the last 8 years. Although there are many judgments, but he will handle most important judgments which are most related to the GST in our today's scenario. So I will request first of all Neha ji to say few words about the VOCA as well as welcome all, and then to the Gaurav Gupta ji to formally introduce Sandeep Goyal ji, and then we will start with the session.
Absolutely,
Over to
absolutely,
Neha ji.
sir. Thank you so much. Thank you. A very warm welcome to Advocate Sandeep Goyal, sir, as well as Akriti Gupta ji for joining us today. And आप अपनी नॉलेज हमारे मेंबर्स के साथ आज शेयर करने के लिए आए हैं, इससे बड़ी क्या ही बात हो सकती है। थैंक यू सो मच फॉर ज्वाइनिंग अस। आई एक्नॉलेज द प्रेजेंस ऑफ गौरव गुप्ता सर, दीपिका अरोड़ा जी, रमन सेठ सर, योगेश बांका जी in the panelist section, and so many participants that have consistently joined us on the fourth day of the course. बहुत कम ऐसा होता है कि 6 दिन के कोर्स में लगातार डेडिकेटेडली मेंबर्स ज्वाइन करते जा रहे हैं, and it is amazing and amazing to see so many, always over 200 members in every day to join. And I hope आज हम लोग आज के टॉपिक को जस्टिफाई कर पाएंगे अपने पार्टिसिपेंट्स के साथ, where we are able to answer all the questions that they have around so difficult, such a difficult law. I always say GST such a difficult law कि रोज ही कुछ नया हो रहा है। So, yes, very warm welcome again to our speakers and participants. और वॉइस ऑफ सीए के बारे में तो सभी लोग जानते हैं. तो आज बस उसकी टैगलाइन के साथ एंड करूंगी. फॉर चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट्स बाय चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट्स ऑलवेज सिंस 2009. Hope to keep seeing you again and again on this platform.
Over to Gaurav ji.
Thank you, sir. Sandeep Goyal ji is a well-known faculty. I'm rather very happy to see him after a long time. Starting with his brief profile, Advocate Sandeep Goyal ji is a well-acclaimed taxation lawyer with over 25 years of experience in litigation and advisory services. A chartered accountant by qualification, he has placed on the All India merit list of rank holders. He was admitted to roll of honors in his college also. He regularly appears before the Punjab and Haryana High Court, various tax tribunals, and the Supreme Court of India also. Over the years, he has handled several high-profile matters that have resulted in landmark judgments. He is actively involved in providing legal and tax solutions through a team of professionals and is known for his deep understanding of the taxation laws. Recently, in 2025, he was appointed as standing counsel for the Punjab and Haryana High Court to handle its litigation in High Court. He has previously served as senior standing counsel for the Income Tax Department also at the same court and was also appointed Additional Advocate General Punjab in 2012. He was unanimously elected as chairman of the All India Federation of Tax Practitioners North Zone, popularly known as AIFTP, for the year 2024. Mr. Goyal has delivered lectures and webinars across the country on taxation and constitutional laws. His articles have been featured in leading legal journals and platforms all across the country. His practice areas includes GST, VAT, income tax, commercial litigations, and constitutional laws, with a focus on litigation, advisory, and tax management solutions. With these words, I request Sandeep Goyal sir to please.
Sorry, Gaurav ji, my apology. I forgot to introduce Akriti Gupta ji. She will also be the co-speaker with the Sandeep ji, and she is also chartered accountant, company secretary, and advocate. And our GST Guru Ashok Batra ji has also joined. We welcome you, sir. Thank you, Gaurav ji. Over to Sandeep ji
Thank you
and
so much.
Akriti ji.
Thank you so much, Ashwini ji, for such nice words, and Gaurav Gupta ji for sending a reminder to me and reminiscence for the things which we have done in the past. I'm really happy to join this forum today, and CA Neha Agarwal ji for contributing so much through VOCA to the society and to the, of course, especially to the chartered accountants. Really heartening to know what you are doing for this forum. I'm also blessed to have Ashok Batra ji with us today. We have all been considered him as a guru and have been reading his books and has been taking benefit of his expertise on the subject of earlier the service tax and VAT, and now we have continuously been guided by him for the GST matters. Thank you so much, sir, for being here and for guiding us all through. Thank you so much. Coming to the topic for today, before I begin with the judgments which we have, landmark judgments as has been interested to me from Supreme Court and High Court, especially with subject of GST. First and the foremost thing which I want to touch upon and share with you as a chartered accountant as well as a lawyer, practicing lawyer in the High Court, that when we see a lot of influx of information through WhatsApp these days, I somehow feel little disappointed the way we interpret the judgments, the way we read those judgments, the way we actually perceive as to how those judgments, whether it has any precedental value or not. So before I begin with the actual judgments, I just wanted to tell our professional brothers that in case we have to read a judgment, please read the facts of that judgment. Please read the contentions of both the sides. Please read the reasoning which is going behind that. Also read the conclusion which has been given by the court based upon the contentions raised by both the sides. Then don't stop here. also analyze the correctness of the judgment. It's very important that we have a mind of our own to analyze the judgment. There is nothing wrong in being having an opinion which is contrary to the judgment which has been delivered by the court. And also, I would say that you should also form your opinion based upon those facts as to what is your opinion, and if you would have been in the place of the judge, what would have been your judgment on the entire issue. There are always different opinions. It is possible that contentions which are raised, you might come out with a third opinion on the same issue. So it is very important that we should have an independent analysis of this. One request: never, ever rely upon the head notes which are given in the judgments, in the books, in the these days the digital media which are they are giving. Don't ever go by the head notes. We should know no cash notes, no head notes. We should read the judgment in entirety to come to the correct decision, to come to the correct conclusion as to what the judgment has said. Never go by the head notes. One more thing, very recently, last week, we have been seeing this message being flashed. ITC negative blocking, the Supreme Court has said ITC negative blocking cannot take place. ITC negative blocking cannot take place. There have been lectures on this, there have been YouTube videos, reels, and so many things which have been happening on that. But let me tell you, brothers and sisters, that there is no judgment given by Supreme Court that ITC negative blocking cannot take place. The dismissal of SLP under Article 136 of the Constitution does not constitute to be a judgment of the Supreme Court at all. It still continues to be the judgment of the High Court, and different opinions still persist. It would have been a different thing in case the High Supreme Court would have interfered in that decision and granted the leave, and thereafter they would have passed an order in a civil appeal. There is a lot of difference between the judgment delivered in a civil appeal and the case which is dismissed in limine at the entertainable stage under Article 136. So we have to be very sure. What the Supreme Court has done in the cases relating to negative blocking is that they are saying that we are not entertaining this petition under Article 136. That does not become the final law at all. It is not a Supreme Court judgment. Yes, the High Court judgment would have a binding precedent wherever within the jurisdiction it is applicable. So in that case, you can go to the High Court, but you can't say that since the Supreme Court has now dismissed the SLP, therefore it has become the final law. It is not so. Of course, the High Court may feel persuaded by the fact that the Supreme Court has refused to interfere. So with these words, now I'll straight come to some landmark judgments, though there are many which have now been delivered within these 8 years. But we will be confining ourselves to some of the very important judgments which we can call as landmark judgments, for which we can have the discussion. The first judgment which comes to my mind would be the case of Bharti Airtel, which has been delivered by the Supreme Court way back in the year 2022, in October 28, 2021. So friends, the facts of that case were that Bharti Airtel, being a registered dealer under GST, had filed its returns for the months of July 17 and August 17 in the subsequent month in Form GSTR3. We all know that. This is the normal practice. However, at that point of time, we all know that Form GSTR2A was not made available. It was not available on the portal, and therefore they were somehow not able to gather the information as to what input tax credit is available to us. Coupled with the fact that GSTR 1, 2, and 3 were to be implemented later on, which the government had promised by way of various circulars as well as the incorporation of law itself, this particular company must have thought that we can now, as of now, the credit is not reflected to us, so we would end up paying this amount in cash, and later on whatever amount is available to us, we'll take that back, and cash can be taken back and credit can be adjusted. We can make the adjustments. However, as we all know that 3B has now become a permanent return. At that point of time also the circulars were issued and 3B had been made the permanent return by way of amendment in Rule 61. When 2A was implemented, Bharti Airtel had sought the rectification of its returns filed in 3B to claim that the returns which I had filed and I had paid the cash through electronic cash ledger for discharge of my output tax liability, since the 2A was not available and now my 2A reflects that I was entitled for this much of credit, I want to pay up that liability through credit, and whatever cash I have paid, that should be refunded back to me. That Delhi High Court had concurred with the contentions raised by the counsel for Bharti Airtel and had allowed a whopping refund of more than 900 crores, saying that since the system itself was not workable, 2A was not made available, the 3B was never considered to be a return at that point of time, and they were entitled to make amendments in GSTR 1 to GSTR 2 and 3 later on. Therefore, you cannot say that now we will not refund this money back to you. And they read down a particular para 4 of the notification, the circular dated 29th of December 2017 to mean that you are entitled to make rectification of that. As we have seen in the past, the revenue being aggrieved by the this decision of the Delhi High Court had approached the Honorable Supreme Court and had raised 2, 3 contentions which are very, very important and might be actually work as a counterproductive to the revenue at a later stage. The first and the foremost argument made by the department was that in terms of Section 59 of the GST Act, there's a procedure for self-assessment. And this was the practice which was there for the earlier period also under the service tax regime also. There was no portal where the ITC was made available. There was no Form 2A. And therefore, the same practice has continued under the GST Act in terms of Section 59. The party is obliged to make a self-assessment based upon their own accounts and records. And if those accounts and records are to be considered, uh, they are liable to make a correct quantification of the tax which is liable to be paid by them, including claim of input tax credit if it at all it is available to them as per their electronic credit ledger. So they say that they should have made a correct self-assessment and paid the tax accordingly. Secondly, they said that the circular which has been found to be, which has not found favor with the Delhi High Court, the reasoning given is incorrect since we have already made the amendment in Section 61, whereby 3B has been made to be a permanent return with retrospective effect. Therefore, this argument of this observation of the Delhi High Court is to be held to be incorrect in terms of that. The contention raised on by the appellant or the Bharti Airtel, in fact, for that matter, respondent in the Supreme Court, was that since this portal was not made available to us, 2A was not there. Therefore, we were left in lurch and we could not have correctly quantified our liability at that point of time, could not take the benefits which were available to us in terms of credit ledger. And therefore, the credit should be made available to us and we should be allowed to rectify the return and the cash refund should be given back to us. Supreme Court, while rejecting the contentions of the SSC and agreeing with the department, has said that since you have not laid challenge to the vires of Rule 61 as has been amended by with retrospective effect, therefore this plea is not available to you, that you are entitled that Form 3B is not a correct return in terms of Section 61, in terms of Rule 61 and Section 39. Since that is the position of law, remains unchallenged, therefore we will go by the fact that the return which has been filed in 3B, you are obliged to, if at all you want to rectify that return, yeah, that can be done only in terms of Section 39(9), wherein it is stated that any correction in the return can be made good only in the subsequent period and not on the period for which you have already filed the return. And since you have opted, you yourself have decided to discharge your liability through cash ledger, and neither the government had ever asked you to discharge that liability, nor it was obligatory upon you through the system. In terms of Section 59, you could have correctly quantified your liability and paid it up accordingly. Since you have not all done your homework properly, and therefore the department cannot be held liable for a folly which has been committed by you, and the court has held that you are not entitled for the refund of this 900 crore rupees which has been paid by you, for the reason that you cannot rectify your returns which have already been filed in the past. Now, this was the judgment which has been given by the Supreme Court, but we have seen a little shift in the viewpoint which has been there prevalent in the High Court subsequent to this judgment also, especially keeping in view the fact that we have found that there are recurrent problems or recurrent corrections which are required to be made over there because of the portal errors, because of the technical issues which have cropped up. The courts have taken a lenient view whereby the corrections have been allowed. There have been some judgments to the contrary, including our High Court in the case of barcode has decided that the correction in the GST or one could not be made, because in certain cases what has happened, a party has filed a GST or one return whereby the GST number of the buyer has been mentioned wrongly, and subsequently after the period has expired, the buyer complains that you had not given my number correctly, therefore I am being denied this ITC, therefore he withholds the payment of the supplier. In that scenario, the party approaches the court, says that I want to correct my GST or one so that the buyer can take the benefit of the ITC which was to be made available to him. Some courts have taken a view. I have done one matter where the High Court has allowed the correction, whereby it was stated that you can make the correction for the export bills. But in barcode, this High Court had taken a view that this GSTR 1 amendment cannot take place for the reason that you do not fall within that ambit of Section 37 correction. However, the Supreme Court in the latest judgment, not in the judgment, I would say latest order, has stated that the bona fide rectifications should be allowed to be made irrespective of the time which has been given, for the reason that if there is no GST loss. In fact, subsequent to Bharti Airtel, I must share that the State Union of India itself has withdrawn one of the withdrawn the SLPs where there was a revenue neutral effect, and the ASG itself has said that since there is a revenue neutrality, therefore I am not going to I'm not going to pursue this, and the party may be allowed to make the correction. The Supreme Court has also said that the Punjab Haryana High Court judgment in the bar code will not be considered as to be precedent as of now, since this correction is being sought to be made bona fidely, and therefore we would allow it. So this is the position of law as of today. But Bharti Airtel in the initial stages was always considered to be a judgment which was contrary to the interest of the assessees. But if you see the counterproductive effect of this judgment is that as of today, we come across a lot of notices which we face where they say there is a difference in 3B and 2A, where they say there's a difference between GSTR 1 and 2A, and so many things are there. Now, the question which would arise is whether the notice which is issued purely on the basis of GSTR 2A is sustainable in the eyes of law or not. Now, if we read this judgment clearly, it says that the form GSTR 2A, which is made available on the portal, is only a facilitator, and it is not final or conclusive in any manner at all. Therefore, in such a given scenario, it is always open for us to say that in terms of Bharti Airtel judgment, in case I have filed my returns in terms of Section 59, where I am in possession of all the requisite documents as required under Section 16, including the invoices, the delivery of goods is there, the tax payment has been made. Therefore, you cannot deny me the credit based upon the wrong returns filed by the supplier, because Section 59 would always be considered as to be the primary, the returns filed by you based upon the documents in your possession would be considered as to be the conclusive evidence and not Form 2A, which is available on the portal. We have I think whenever we receive any notice, this is the first objection which is taken by the department, that there is a difference between 2A and 3B. Somehow the demands have also been confirmed on this. But if we take a plea, quoting from the Bharti Airtel judgment itself, that you cannot deny me this credit in case I am fulfilling the requirements of Section 16. So therefore, I would rather say this Bharti Airtel judgment will help all the professionals in the long run and would endure to the benefit of the SSCs. Therefore, read this judgment carefully. This is one of the landmark judgments delivered right in the beginning and would also help us in pursuing our professional goals. So with this, we can take the questions, Neha ji, in case there are any questions from any participants with relation to this judgment or section 59 or 13 and whatever they want to ask.
Sure, sure, sir. I would now request all the participants कि अगर उनकी भारतीय एयरटेल रिलेटेड या सर ने जो सेक्शंस कवर करे हैं 15 और 13 उससे रिलेटेड अगर आपका कोई प्रैक्टिकल क्वेश्चन है तो प्लीज Q&A बॉक्स में प्लीज पोस्ट योर क्वेश्चंस. Sir, in the meanwhile, Q&A box में 2 questions are there.
Yes.
Shall I read it for you?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Sure, sir. Sir, Gaurav Mehra ji is asking, company had applied for refund under option of with payment under GST. Payment of the same GST liability was made through 3B. Department had rejected the refund on account of some transitional element. Company has given the undertaking to department to not go into appeal. Department has issued PMT-03 on the basis of this undertaking. After giving so many letters, department has not provided GST ITC credit to the company. Can we claim the same credit back as ITC in our GSTR 3B?
No. I think you can't claim your ITC back in GST or 3B. The only option left with you is to approach the High Court. We have seen many cases where the GST ITC credit for which you have sought the refund, that is not given back in terms of Rule 90. I think the only option left with you is to approach the High Court. There have been a lot of litigation on this. Unfortunate, but yes, the litigation is there. In some cases, the refund is this credit is not given back. But surely you cannot take this in GST or 3B. You will be creating some further problem for yourself.
Gaurav sir, if you have an additional question, kindly raise your hand. Moving on, sir. We have another question from Vijay Kumar sir. He's a GST officer in the South. He's a dedicated member joining us every time. So he says the High Court remand back to adjudication officer to verify documents and pass orders with direction. Why the first appellate authority is not given the power to remand back? There is a chance that the dealers would not have submitted documents at the time of orders, would not have reversed ITC based on credit note issued. In such a situation, adjudicating authority is the right person to look into the genuineness, and if the appellate authority comes to know at the time of hearing why they cannot remand back. I have come across that there is a representation made and read it in Taxman also, whether there is any clarification or circular around this.
Subramaniam sir, thank you for this good question. In fact, I'm handling few litigation on this aspect itself, but I think you will be the best person to answer this rather than me, because your act itself has incorporated this provision where it is stated that the appellate authority, the first appellate authority rather, is not entitled to remand the case back, as they presume that the appellate authority is competent enough to take care of all the aspects of the matter. He can even further go into the issue and can also, inquire into the different documents, and thereafter can come to a conclusion as to what should be the final decision in this. We do find similar provisions under other acts also, where the powers of remand have not been given to the first appellate authority. But yes, it's a legislative intent which will have to follow. Therefore, I would be the last person to say that as to whether this power should be available to the first appellate authority or not. Yes, in case they want to incorporate, they can do it. That's a legislative policy, which I think we cannot comment upon that.
Batra sir, kindly unmute yourself.
Similar provisions were there in the Finance Act 1994.
Yes.
And when we used to go to the tribunal says, okay, commissioner does not have any power to remand. We had a power to remand, we will remand it out.
That's
So
even
if
there.
therefore- Yeah, that is what I am saying. Rather than going to the High Court and filing a writ and all that, he can
Yes.
file an appeal to the tribunal when it's come into operation And then the tribunal can take cognizance of those cases and they can certainly remand it back.
They
And
can
in the judgment, I think I myself has argued, they said that once the adjudicating authority has not acted as an adjudicating authority, how the commissioner we can decide the matter. So therefore, we upheld, and in case it doesn't have any power and you are problem because of departmental appeal, you had a problem, we demand it back to the adjudicating authority with these actions.
Yes. Sir, you're right. If that power is available under the GST Act, also the tribunal can remand the case back. But unfortunately or fortunately, this power is not there with the first appellate authority. Idea is perhaps to the expedite the disposal of appeal on merits rather than the person becoming a ping pong between the first appellate authority. Especially in the cases of refunds, we have seen that the matters being remanded back to the adjudicating authority again and again. So I think that's again a legislative thing which needs to be considered. Any other question, Neha ji?
Yes, sir. Shaina ji is asking, supplier GSTN cancelled with effect from date of registration because of physical verification. Even GSTR 1 and 3B was filed by them. We are not allowed ITC even it is available in 2A, 2B. Please suggest.
Sir, again, the same problem which we are facing. I mean, the department has gone on to the extent of declaring that Hindustan Unilever Limited itself is non-existent. We have seen the writ petition having been filed in that case before the Madras High Court, where the case has been remanded back and said that how can you say that Hindustan Unilever is non-existent? But that was a case where everybody knew that Hindustan Unilever Limited is an existent person. But unfortunately, there have been many instances where the persons do exist, but they have been declared to be non-existent. I am in one of the matters, the NAHEI contractor has been declared to be non-existent who has laid the roads. I mean, maybe in the front of the GST office itself, but he has been declared to be non-existent because when they went to his office, which appears to be a communication address only, they have found that the address is the person was not sitting there. Therefore, they have declared him to be non-existent. The money is lying in the cash ledger. The money is lying in his ITC. He wants to file the return, pay the tax. The revenue is not taking that tax. So this is the way this is functioning. Insofar as your 2A and 2B is concerned, of course, you have a valid point. Against relying upon Bharti Airtel, you can say that it is only facilitator and therefore I should be allowed the benefit of ITC. It cannot be denied to me. Where I'm fulfilling all the requirements of Section 16. So that will please available to you. But yes, it's a matter of litigation.
Thank you, sir. Shaina ji, if you have an additional question around this, please raise your hand. सर हम 1 minute और वेट करेंगे for some additional questions or raise hands और फिर उसके बाद सर हम proceed कर सकते हैं.
And we can take further questions at the end in case somebody wants it.
Yes, sir. We shall proceed. Thank you.
Yeah. So friends, the next judgment which we are discussing on this forum today is the judgment of Radhakrishnan Industries. We all know in the context of GST, Radhakrishnan Industries judgment, which originated from Himachal Pradesh High Court, had a lot of value, but fortunately, the law had been amended subsequent to this judgment, and I would say the effect of this judgment has been somehow watered down, but still lot of effect it still holds if we have to interpret it Section 83 as it stands amended today. I'm not going into the question as to whether Section 83, where it can be invoked, how it is to be done, and all those things. I have pulled out the judgment to discuss with you today in the context of the writ remedy under Article 226. I am faced with this question almost on a daily basis from our professional brothers, asking as to whether the writ we can file a writ in this case. I said, why do you want to file a writ in this case? The answer is that since there would be no relief which would be given by the appellate authority, we don't expect any relief from the appellate authority. Secondly, they would say, in case I go in appeal, we'll have to make a pre-deposit. Third thing is that the order passed by the adjudicating authority is incorrect or it is wrong. So these are certain things which come to my, which we face every day and somehow we feel that the writ remedy is a remedy which is available to us as a matter of right. So this judgment of Radhakrishnan Industries would throw a lot of light on these circumstances and would lay guidance to all our professional brothers to come to a conclusion or a decision as to whether, when they are faced with certain show cause notices or the orders or other certain proceedings, whether they can approach the High Court under Article 226 or not. If we read this para, if we read para 27 of the judgment, the court has laid down the certain guidelines with regard to the maintainability of writ petition before the High Court. There are 6 guidelines which have been laid down and which we need to keep in our mind when we decide as to whether we should advise a client to file the writ petition or not. The first is, they say, the power under Article 226 of the Constitution to issue writs can be exercised not only for enforcement of fundamental rights, but for any other purpose as well. So normally it is understood that we can approach the high courts under 226 for the enforcement of fundamental right. That may not be the correct proposition. We can go and approach the high court for enforcement of our statutory rights as well. So if there is a violation of the statutory right also, we can approach under 226. Article 32, where we can approach the Supreme Court, their jurisdiction will be exercised only in case there is a violation of fundamental rights as given in Chapter 3 of the Constitution of India. So we need to understand this difference between the powers under 226 and Article 32. I mean, on the lighter side, Supreme Court always say that the High Court has the wider powers and discretion than us, because under Article 226 you can approach the writ court not only for fundamental rights but also for statutory rights, whereas their right to issue prerogative writs is restricted only to the fundamental right violation. So that's the first principle. Secondly, they say that the High Court has the discretion not to entertain a writ petition. One of the restrictions placed on the power of the High Court is where an effective alternative remedy is available to the aggrieved person. कभी भी अगर हम लोग किसी शो ऑर्डर को देखते हैं, द फर्स्ट थिंग कम्स टू आवर माइंड इज दैट वी कैन फाइल एन अपील अगेंस्ट दिस ऑर्डर. नाउ question arises, can we file a writ petition against such an order? I have already discussed 2-3 instances where persons say that we want to go to the High Court because we will not get relief from the first appellate authority. We don't have the pre-deposit. In that case, we have to make the pre-deposit. They don't say we don't have the pre-deposit. They say we will have to make the pre-deposit, or they say the order is wrong. I think these 3-4 is the instances. You cannot go to the writ court merely for the heck of it. You have to make out a case as to where the writ petition would be maintainable. So the word used is that where the effective alternative remedy is available to the aggrieved person, then the writ court would be reluctant to entertain a writ petition. They have the discretion not to entertain a writ petition. I would put it in other words that the High Court does not have the discretion not to entertain a writ petition where the person does not have an effective alternate remedy available to the aggrieved person. Now, in this case, if we go back to the facts of this particular case in Radhakrishnan Industries, there was an attachment order passed by the Joint Commissioner exercising powers of the Commission under Section 83. Now, the appeal under Section 107 is available only against the orders which are passed by the adjudicating authority, and we all know that the Commissioner is not considered as to be adjudicating authority. That's provided under the provisions of the Act itself. When the party had approached the Himachal Pradesh High Court, claiming that Section 83 order is bad in the eyes of law and therefore we need relief and the bank attachment should be done away with, the first question which was posed to the counsel, to the party by the court, was that why can't you file an appeal against this attachment order passed under Section 83? The argument raised by the SSC was that there is no appeal provided to me because Section 83 powers have been exercised by the commissioner and therefore appeal is not available. There is no efficacious alternative remedy available to me since the appeal is not there. And tribunal at that point was not functioning. It's not even functioning today. The High Court had rejected that contention, saying that against the order of the Joint Commissioner, you have the remedy of filing an appeal before the Commissioner, and therefore the writ was dismissed in limine. When the party had approached the Supreme Court, the court had found that the powers are being exercised as commissioner, as a delegate of the commissioner, and therefore we would presume that this order has been passed by the commissioner, and therefore the appeal under Section 107 would not be.
Sorry, webinar.
And there is no effective alternative remedy available to the SSC, and therefore the writ petition was ordered to be maintained, and Section 83 orders were set aside by the Supreme Court. Now, the third principle which the Supreme Court has laid down is that there are 4 exceptions to the rule of alternative remedy, meaning thereby wherever the alternate remedy is available, but still the writ court can entertain. It's not that it should entertain or would entertain. It says it can entertain. These are the 4 cases where the writ court can entertain. One, where writ petition has been filed for the enforcement of a fundamental right protected by Part 3 of the Constitution. So in case a person is aggrieved of the violation of his fundamental right, we normally invoke Article 14 and 19(1)(g) when we go to the High Court. In that scenario, the High Court can entertain the writ petition. But to be honest, I think it's very, very uphill task to convince the court that there is a violation of fundamental right in all these cases. Because even if there is a violation of fundamental right, the court can say that there is an alternative remedy available to you where you can go. Because every case where the tax has been imposed, we would claim that it is a violation of Article 19(1)(g) of the Constitution of India. Yes, there could be some circumstances where we may be able to impress upon the court that this action of the respondents is, if in effect, has brought my business to a halt, and therefore the alternative remedy would not be efficacious in the circumstances of the case. And I am invoking Article 226. So that depends upon the facts of each case. The second would be when there has been violation of principles of natural justice. We have seen, I think, a flood of litigation has arisen when they were issued to us under 74, 73 recently. The department has proceeded in a completely mechanical manner. They have proceeded in a manner as if you don't have any right to be heard at all. We have seen the cases, the notices issued, uploaded on the portal, replies filed, and thereafter no personal hearing is granted and the order is passed. So they say, all right, we have passed the order. We have gone to the court and court said the personal hearing is mandatory in terms of Section 75(4). That's a statutory right granted to an SSC. And even if 75(4) is not available, guided by various judgments, there is a violation of principles of natural justice. If you talk about Sahara India and other judgments, that unless and until the hearing is barred under the statute, these quasi-judicial authorities are bound to grant you the personal hearing, and only thereafter they can come to a conclusion. That could be the one aspect of violation of principles of natural justice. Second could be a case where a notice is issued to you. We file a reply to that. They grant me the personal hearing. But when they pass the order, they simply ignore the reply filed by you or the submissions made by you at the time of hearing. In that case, also the courts have come to a conclusion that it will be a violation of principles of natural justice, because a speaking order is bound to be made on all the averments made by you, reply which has been filed by you. Even if you say that it is a completely lame reply, it is completely innocuous reply which you have filed, still they have to write 2 lines to say that we don't agree with the reply filed by you. They have to give the reasoning, because reasoning has been found to be the soul of any order. If you have to file an appeal, you would always presume, you would always take the grounds as to why this reasoning which has been given by the adjudicating authority is wrong. So therefore, the non-speaking order has also been considered to be violative of principles of natural justice where the writ court is maintainable. Very recently, I did a matter before the High Court where there were about, I think, more than 100 notices were there. These replies were filed, those were also on record. And when they pass the order, they say some of the notices have filed a reply, some of the notices have not filed a reply. Then there's some of the notices have attended the personal hearing and some of the notices have not attended the personal hearing. And then they go on to pass on to confirm the show cause notice without giving any reasoning, saying that there is no weight in the arguments raised by any of the SSCs. We went to the court that we have filed a reply. My reply does not find mention in the order. They don't even say that I filed the reply. They say some of the SSCs have filed the reply. When you pass an adjudicating authority, you need to be very, very clear as to who has filed the reply, who has attended the proceedings, what have you done to that, where's the order sheet recorded. You can't pass the order just like in a mechanical manner. So fortunately for us, the department in that case had come to the court and virtually considered saying that we will pass a fresh order after considering their reply and also giving them the personal hearing. And therefore the order was set aside. But otherwise, the magnitude of the demands which are raised in such like cases is more than 100 crores. A person, if he has to go to the appellate authority, he'll have to spend 10 crores as a pre-deposit, which practically is not possible these days, especially in the cases where the person is only doing the trading work, where the margins are much lesser. And therefore, this case would be a case where we can approach the High Court in writ jurisdiction. Third instance, which the court says exception carved out, is where there is the proceedings are wholly without jurisdiction. So whether the proceedings are wholly without jurisdiction would depend upon facts of each case, and we have to establish as to how those proceedings are totally without jurisdiction. One case would be where there is a pecuniary jurisdiction. The officer does not possess the pecuniary jurisdiction, the monetary jurisdiction to issue a notice. Second could be a case where the monetary jurisdiction is not there. We have seen those cases. Third could be the case where the assumption of jurisdiction in the cases where the person is the officer has gone beyond his statutory powers. He has passed the order and therefore he cannot work in that fashion. And all those cases, depending upon facts, we can approach the court. Of course, it's always discretionary with the High Court as to whether they entertain it or not. But then, yes, this is the challenge we face every day, and we love these challenges. And therefore, I mean, if you are a good lawyer, you have to actually take it up onto yourself and impress upon the court as to how the writ should be made entertainable. Then, next exception is where the vires of legislation is challenged. I think under the GST Act, almost every single section and subsection has been challenged before the High Courts, before the Supreme Court. The vires are under challenge, the circulars are under challenge, the statute, the notifications are under challenge. We have very recently seen 9610 having been struck down by the court. We have also seen the circular, the notification with regard to ocean freight being struck down by the Supreme Court. So there have been many instances where the law has gone beyond the constitutional provisions, or the notifications or the circulars have gone beyond the provisions of the act itself. In such a scenario, you are not left with any other alternative but to approach the court, get that provision or the circular or the notification quashed, and thereafter seek the necessary relief from the various authorities in accordance with law. So that will be the fourth exception. Then the court says that alternative remedy by itself does not divest the High Court of its power under Article 226 in an appropriate case, though ordinarily a writ petition should not be entertained where an efficacious alternative remedy is provided by law. There could be the cases where the efficacious alternative remedy is available to an SSC or to the applicant, but the court can still entertain that writ petition, de-horse that there is an alternative remedy. It is purely the discretion of the High Court as to whether this writ petition should be entertained or not. Even if there is efficacious remedy, the court can still entertain, depending upon, again, you have to impress upon the court as to why it should be entertained. Court can be, there could be a flood of litigation relating to a particular issue which is arising every day. There could be an interpretational issue which comes up. There is no dispute on facts. Court can say, yes, this is something which is on a recurring basis. This is coming to us every day. So therefore, we would rather put an end to this litigation, entertain this writ petition on pure question of law, even if there is an efficacious alternative remedy in such scenario. Therefore, that can be one situation where the Article 226 can be invoked. When they say when a right is created by a statute which itself prescribes the remedy. For enforcing the right or liability, resort must be had to that particular remedy before invoking Article 226. The rule of exhaustion of statutory remedy is the rule of policy, convenience, and discretion. This is for the High Court as to where it should be done. Then they say that in case where the High Court has entertained a writ petition, after having delved into the issue whether the writ petition is maintainable or not, and whether the writ petition should be entertained or not, in such a scenario, the courts would be slow. Courts would not be readily in that discretion of the High Court would not be readily interfered with. With utmost respect to the, I would say the apex court, there has not been much consistency with this, where the Supreme Court has interfered in many cases where the High Court, having gone into the issue as to whether the writ is entertainable or not, still the Supreme Court has set aside or set the orders at naught on merits by simply saying that there was an alternative remedy available and therefore we will not be entertaining this writ petition. So these were my takes from this judgment of Radhakrishnan Industries. As I have already stated that Section 83, I am not going too deep into this. My idea was to talk about the alternative remedy, which is under 226. So Neha ji, if there are any questions with regard to 226, we can take up those questions.
नेहा, अच्छा नेहा नेहा छोड़,
जी।
हेलो सर, कोई इशू आ रहा है?
नहीं, कोई इशू नहीं है सर। मैं कह रहा था क्वेश्चंस कोई हैं इस जजमेंट के ऊपर या इस टॉपिक के ऊपर, वी कैन टेक अप दोस क्वेश्चंस।
अगर किसी मेंबर का कोई भी क्वेश्चन है तो वो हैंड रेज कर सकते हैं। सर प्रदीप जी आ गए हैं, ये आपके मित्र बरनाला से मिलने।
प्रदीप जी नमस्कार, मैं देख रहा था सर प्रदीप जी को। जी,
अगर किसी भी मेंबर का कोई क्वेश्चन है रिलेटेड टू दिस जजमेंट, दे मे रेज देयर हैंड्स so that we will unmute them.
I think we can proceed further.
Yes, sir.
Now I'll request Akriti. I'll take a break in between. I'll request Akriti if you can.
दो क्वेश्चन सर इसमें क्यू एंड में है। एक तो प्राची रोड़ा का है,
अगर ये क्वेश्चन इससे रिलेटेड है नहीं मेरे ख्याल से।
ठीक है सर। एक विजय कुमार सुब्रमण्यन जी का है, सर वाई कोर्ट डिमांड कंक्लूसिव प्रूफ।
ये क्वेश्चंस जजमेंट से रिलेटेड नहीं है। लेट आकृति कंटिन्यूज एंड देयर आफ्टर।
ओके ओके सर।
Akriti, can you please continue?
Thank you so much, sir, for handing it over to me. So, for the scope of my judgments, I would state two basic judgments first, not for the subject matter, but to understand how the provisions have been interpreted by the Supreme Court and where the Supreme Court chooses to restrain itself, especially when deciding the constitutionality of a provision. So, the two judgments which we can place in a juxtaposition in this situation is that of Union of India versus Mohit Minerals and Union of India versus VKC Footsteps. In the case of VKC Footsteps, the question before the Supreme Court was, while granting a refund under the GST provision, especially under Section 54, subsection 3 proviso, which talks about unutilized ITC, the definition of net ITC that has been given under Rule 89 creates a distinction between inputs as inputs for goods and inputs for services, where the net ITC's definition does not include the inputs which might have been for input services, due to which the people started approaching the court that there is a distinction that has been granted, which has been drawn by the statute, by the rules therein, and there is that particular aspect could not be done because it is in violation of Article 14 of the Constitution of India. The first and the foremost thing that the Supreme Court said is that granting of a refund or not is not a constitutional right, but it is a statutory right. The refund itself is the refund itself is granted by virtue of a proviso. The main rule under Section 54, subsection 3 is that no refund of unutilized ITC shall be granted, and only thereafter a proviso has been added to give unutilized ITC in certain situations. Keeping in mind the fact that this is a concession, something it is in the nature of a concession or exception that has been given by the legislature, the Supreme Court was of the opinion that no right to avail refund after calculating the aspect of after including the aspect of input services can be done. There was another important thing that this particular judgment talks about is Article 14. The scope of Article 14 in constitutional matters was also restricted to state that a discrimination in a taxing legislature is permitted. It is a policy decision of the legislature, and where the constitution itself creates a distinction between goods as well as services. In that case, there cannot be a question regarding this particular provision being unconstitutional in nature. As against this, when we come to the case of Mohit Minerals, Union of India versus Mohit Minerals, which talked about levying of GST separately on CIF value aspect of a transaction when goods are imported, the Supreme Court quashed the notifications levying this GST on CIF value, stating that it is in violation of the basic spirit of the GST law because the simple reason that the value of CIF has already been included at the time of payment of IGST at the time of import. So drawing a distinction between taking out a particular service from a composite supply transaction cannot be permitted, as it would be against the basic concepts of GST, which talks section 8 specifically, which talks about composite supply. Similarly, the Kerala High Court, in the case of Sanj Laboratories, goes on to decide the vires of section of Rule 96 sub Rule 10 in the context of Section 16(3) of the IGST, where the vires have been where the particular rule has been disregarded and has been declared to be ultra vires. Here, the difference between the Section 54(3) proviso and Section 16(3) would be that Section 54(3) proviso gives you an exceptional benefit of refund in certain cases, whereas Section 16(3) is an enabling provision, enabling the enabling refund in the cases of zero-rated supply. These three judgments, when read together, show what can be the trend of the judiciary, especially the apex court and the high courts, when it comes to the constitutional vires of the provision. The benchmark, which is reasonability, might not sit good in each and every case, especially when the benefit that has been granted is in the nature of a concession and has been inserted by way of a proviso. As against this, when it is granted in a way of a statutory right, just like in Section 16, subsection 3. In such cases, a discrimination between the people have been taken up by the high courts at various instances to state that if there is an enabling provision, and there is no further provision that is enabling the government to impose an additional restriction in addition to what conditions have already been given, in these situations, the discrimination between taxpayers or discrimination between transactions might not be allowed. With that, Sandeep sir, I would.
Thank you, Akriti. So we can take the questions in case there are any, or we can take it up at the end. All right. So we move further with the judgment of Radhika Agarwal, which we had all waited for a very, very long time. Friend, this judgment deals with the issue of the powers of arrest and the prosecution under Section 132 of the GST Act. As we all know, since the inception of GST Act, there had been a number of arrests. There had been a number of instances where the coercive steps had been taken, but arrest being the extreme step which can be taken to take away the liberty of a person. The persons, the assessees, a lot of them had approached the high courts and had also approached the Supreme Court under Article 32, claiming that the provisions of Section 69 and 132 are constitutional to the extent that it is violative of Article 14 as well as Article 21, and also on the question of legislative competence being violative of Article 246 capital A. So I'll dissect all these three arguments separately, and then thereafter we'll take up the observation of the Honorable Supreme Court to deal with all those three things. One, the court says the argument raised was that the powers of arrest under section 69 and prosecution under 132 punish a person to put him in prison for the evasion of tax is not incidental or ancillary to the levy of tax which is permissible under Article 246 capital A. So if we read Article 246 capital A, it allows the legislature of the union and the state to frame the laws with respect to the levy of GST, the goods and service tax. Now, the similar powers are given to the state and union parliament, state legislatures and the union parliament under Article 246, which was the provision which earlier governed the division of powers between the union and state. Under Article 246, they say there have been certain entries given in those lists, Schedule 7, List 1, List 2, and List 3. List 1, we all know that is the union list, 2 is the state list, and 3 is the concurrent list. So whatever subjects or the fields have been given, fields of legislation have been given, the legislatures are entitled to frame the laws in respect of those. Now, question had arisen before the various courts as to whether the offenses and punishments would be covered under these entries itself, or those are to be considered as to be separate from the powers to legislate in these fields. If you see, there is a specific entry under List 1 and List 2 both, where it is categorically stated that the offenses and punishments relating to the subjects mentioned in List 1 are within the purview of the Union Parliament. I'll just elaborate it further, that there are about 92 entries in List 1, which describe the various fields in which the Union Parliament can enact. Of course, the residual power is always there with the Parliament. Leave that aside. For all the fields of legislation which are enumerated in 92, there is one entry 66 in List 1, which says, entry 97, which says that the offenses relating to these entries in List 1 is also one of the fields mentioned in List 1. So therefore, there is a specific entry that we will make the laws with regard to the offenses under List 1 also. Similar is the power given under entry List 2, where the state legislature, there is a separate entry of offenses and punishment, which says that for the violations of the fields of legislation in List 2, the state legislature can also frame the laws with regard to the offenses committed under those. Now, an argument was raised that if the offenses and punishments are considered to be the ancillary and incidental to the main entry itself, then where is the need to have these separate entries in the List 1 and List 2 as well? Therefore, an argument was raised that under Article 246A, there is no power to make the laws with regard to offenses and punishments, which is available under List 1 and List 2 to the Union Parliament and to the state legislature. That was one argument with regard to legislative competence. Second argument which was raised was that in terms of Section 69, an arrest can be made and can be ordered by the commissioner in case he has reason to believe that a person has committed the offenses of which are enumerated in 132, 1A, B, C, and D, which talks about wrong availment of ITC, wrong passing of ITC, the issuance of bills without issuance of, sale of material without issuance of invoice, and collection of tax and non-payment thereof. These are basically four different situations where the cognizable offenses are there, and the amount incorporated there is more than 5 CR. Now, a person would say that from where do you come to a conclusion without even issuing a show cause notice to me or without issuing an order to me that I have exceeded that amount of 5 crore, there is an evasion? And secondly, there is always an option of going an appeal. A person, an adjudicating authority can simply come to a conclusion that there is an excess, there is offense which is committed beyond 5 crores, and that order can be set aside later on. And therefore, the power to arrest a person under Section 69 is discriminatory, violative of Article 14, and would stand in the teeth of Article 21, which guarantees the personal liberty to a person. Both these arguments had been taken up by the Honorable Supreme Court in this case of Radhika Agarwal, where by also commenting upon the provisions of Customs Act and adopting the same for the GST Act, the court went on to say that insofar as the legislative competence is concerned, we say that the power to arrest a person and to punish him under Section 132 is incidental and ancillary to the powers to impose tax, because in case such a power is not given, a person can be given a free hand to evade the tax. He can easily escape the punishment which is contemplated by the law. He might be ready to face the penalty proceedings, but still we will consider that this is incidental and ancillary to the main legislative power under Article 46A, and therefore the provisions of Section 132 have been upheld. Coming to Section 69, with regard to power of arrest, we had raised an argument. I was fortunate to be a part of this very, very good litigation, I would rather say, the debate which was there in the Supreme Court. We had relied upon one judgment of Honorable Delhi High Court and later on affirmed by the Supreme Court in the case of Make My Trip. We all know what had happened in the case of Make My Trip. The chief executive officer of Make My Trip was arrested on the ground that you have not paid, you have collected certain service tax which has not been paid in excess of rupees 50 lakh at that point of time. And he was put behind bars, arrested. And thereafter, a writ petition had been filed, though he was granted bail initially, but a writ petition had been filed before the High Court saying that this arrest is illegal. The bench of Honorable Mr. Justice S. Muralidhar had declared that unless and until there is a quantification of the amount which has been not paid, which has been evaded, there cannot be an arrest, because doing this would amount to putting a cart ahead of the horse. They say unless and until you come to a conclusion that a person has evaded the tax to the tune of more than 50 lakhs, or he has not paid the tax to the tune of more than 50 lakhs after having collected, you cannot arrest a person. This judgment had been taken to the Supreme Court, and with the, I would say rather, two lines, the Honorable Supreme Court, after having granted the leave, this is a discretion which this is the distinction I was drawing at the beginning of my deliberation. The Supreme Court had granted the leave, converted the SLP into an appeal, and thereafter said, we do not find any reason to interfere with the judgment of the Delhi High Court. We entirely agree with it, and the civil appeal was dismissed. Therefore, those two lines whereby the Delhi High Court judgment had been affirmed, the there was a merger of the order of the Delhi High Court, and it had become a judgment of the Honorable Delhi High Court, Honorable Supreme Court of India. And riding upon the discussion on the deliberations which were held in the case of Make My Trip, we had argued that unless and until a quantification of this 5 crore is made under the GST Act also, the rest cannot take place. The Honorable Supreme Court had not agreed with our contentions and had observed that though it is desirable that until and unless the show cause notice is issued or the assessment is made, the quantification takes place, a person should not be arrested. But it is not possible to assume that till that position, the person cannot be arrested at all. What the court says that the benchmark for the commissioner to come to a conclusion in the case of arrest would be much higher, where they have to arrive at a conclusion that yes, there are almost compelling reasons for them to arrest a person because you have made the offenses which are describable under Section 132, which are cognizable and non-bailable, and the amount is 5 crores. but that material has to be sufficient enough to come to that conclusion. That reasons to believe has to be there. The safeguards which have been provided by the court are in this judgment are that a person who is being arrested, he would not only be issued the arrest memo, which was the position earlier, he would also be given the reasons of arrest, and he would also be provided the material based upon which he has been arrested, so that in case he wants to seek the relief from the court, whether it's a bail court or the writ court, it would be available to them. And you can the person can under article 21, he can avail his remedies in accordance with law, and in case his arrest is found to be illegal, then of course he would be set free. And these are the basic guidelines which the court said have to be adopted in each and every case. While doing so, the court had adopted the reasoning given in the case of Arvind Kejriwal, where they say that arrest is not to be made in every case. It has to be based upon some concrete material, and merely because the offense has been made does not mean that a person has to be arrested. It has to be coupled with the fact that unless and until the arrest is made, there were chances that a person would tamper with the evidence, or may also influence the witnesses, or uh, may be at a flight risk, and can also in a way I mean he can actually interfere with the administration of justice. So all those things have to be considered, not only by the commissioner but also by the court, who would consider the bail matter whenever it goes before that court. Also, the court says that there are certain of judgments of courts where they say that under the bail anticipatory bail provisions are not available to a person who is being accused under the GST Act. In fact, there was a judgment of the Supreme Court itself where it was stated that the anticipatory bail under Section 438 is not available to a person who is accused of GST fraud. But this judgment of Radhika Agarwal has categorically said that a person is entitled to apply even for anticipatory bail, even if there is no FIR, and he is anticipating the arrest. In such a scenario, he can approach the court, and with the material, he can show that I am entitled for an anticipatory bail. Of course, those matters are to be considered on the facts of each case. I would say this judgment, though, has not said that Section 69 or Section 132. So they say Section 69 and 132 are within the constitutional limits, so there is nothing wrong with it. But at the same time, they have laid out certain guidelines, and based upon which I think these instances of arresting every person, a lot of persons, has definitely gone down. One more important aspect which has been noticed by the court and has actually yielded to the benefit of the assessees is the court says that you cannot use the arrest provision to coerce a person to pay up the tax amount, which we have seen has happened in the past. Unfortunately, is happening even today. At some point of time, somewhere it is happening that they are under the garb of arrest or under the threat of arrest. The amounts are they are being asked to pay the voluntary tax. Only today I had come across a case where a person has been asked to pay a penalty under Section 122, claiming that this amount has been paid by him voluntarily. I fail to understand how a person can pay a penalty which is yet to be imposed upon him, because Section 122 does not envisage any voluntary payment. If at all it has to be paid, it has to be paid only in terms of Section 74(5), not by virtue of only imposition of penalty under 122, because there is no tax liability against that person. How can you ask a person to pay up that liability merely saying it's a penalty amount? So 122, of course, is not applicable in such a scenario. Be that as it may, the judgment is there. Need a bit of more clarity as and when the things would happen. When the facts of the case would arise, ultimately the cases would definitely travel up to the Supreme Court as and when Section 69 and 132 would be implemented, and we'll see more clarity with regard to this judgment. So this is the Radhika Agarwal judgment, putting to certain extent a rest to the controversy with regard to Section 69 and 132 of the GST Act, which we had been fighting for the last many years now. Now I go on to the judgment of our Punjab Haryana High Court, which I had been fortunate to handle that judgment, which would actually have a lot of ramifications, if I say, with regard to the cross empowerment, the concept which we have seen under the GST Act. So Section 62B, as we all know, provides that once the proceedings have been initiated by one person, by one of the authorities like state GST authorities, then the central GST authorities cannot initiate any proceedings or cannot proceed further or investigation uh, on the same subject matter. That's Section 62B. And same is the situation vice versa, where the central authorities have initiated. Of course, the state authorities cannot initiate. There has been a cleavage of opinion between various high courts. I would be candid in saying that. But our high court, jurisdictional high court, Punjab Haryana High Court, has considered this aspect threadbare. Giving you little facts, the person was accused of availing wrongful ITC. The central authorities and the state authorities both had been actually chasing him. State authorities gone and raided his premises under Section 67. While those proceedings were there, the central authorities had also raided his premises and took away certain laptops, etc. The party approached the High Court, where they said that both the central and state authorities are proceeding against me, which is not permissible under Section 62B, and therefore I may be directed to appear before one of the authorities, and they may decide as to who want to proceed further in the matter. That had happened in the year 2018. So state and central authorities amongst themselves had decided that for the period up to July 2019, the date on which the state authorities had raided the premises, the state authorities would be proceeding in the matter, and central authorities would transfer the entire material to the state authorities, and they may take this matter further. Now, thereafter, while those proceedings were going on, the state authorities were investigating, the summons were being issued, the statements being recorded, the documents were being produced. DGGA authorities, who were not in picture earlier, had raided the premises of the SSC again. At that point of time, the SSC pointed it out that all my documents up to date have already been summoned by the state authorities, and they are aware of all the situation and they are investigating the matter, and you cannot proceed in this fashion that everybody is now coming to my premises and going ahead under Section 67. These central authorities, that point of time, confirmed with the state authorities, who had confirmed that, yes, I have already taken possession of the books up to date, and thereafter, without recording any panchnama on that date, except saying that we had come and we have been informed that the state authorities are already proceeding in the matter, they went away. Nothing had happened thereafter. Now, while that state authorities had already issued a show cause notice which was being contested, another team of DGI had again raided the premises and asked the SSC to be present at Meerut, saying that what we are investigating is the period subsequent to 2019 for which the state authorities are taking action against you. Now, that is the point when we had approached the High Court saying that since the state authorities have already been seized of the matter and the subject matter is with regard to wrongful availment of ITC, the DGI authorities are not entitled to proceed in this matter, and therefore their proceedings, the summons should be stayed. The High Court had stayed the summons, saying that the state authorities have already been cognizant of all these issues. Thereafter, by unilateral action, the DGGI had impressed upon the state authority to say that all the proceedings subsequent to 2019 stand transferred to DGGI, and Meerut authorities will do that, will take up the action in this. And they said we have consolidated, centralized all the proceedings across the country to DGGI Meerut, and they would be the competent authority to do it. Now, that particular letter whereby the transfer of all the proceedings were made to DGGI Meerut was subject matter of another writ petition before the High Court, in which this decision has been given. This is CWP 1661 of 2022. The argument raised was that there is no power under GST Act to transfer the proceedings, and that too in this fashion where the central authorities are saying that we will take away the proceedings from state authorities to the central authorities and will decide on our own. The We were saying that if you have a look at the provisions of this provisions of the act in an entirety, there's not a whisper as to when, who can transfer, how it can be transferred, and if the transfer eventually takes place, whether that can be challenged or not. We drew certain parity from the proceedings which we see under the Income Tax Act under Section 127, also certain provisions of the VAT Act where the provisions of transfer of proceedings were available, and commissioners or some particular authorities were entitled to transfer the proceedings from one authority to another. Under the GST Act also, there are certain provisions where the transfer of proceedings can take place, but not in respect of this. That is with regard to the transfer of appeal cases, etc. So, riding on those provisions, we had impressed upon the court that in the absence of any transfer provision, the proceedings cannot be transferred to one DGGI. And since Section 62B, subject matter has to be considered as to be wrongful availment of ITC. The first authority is this GST, Haryana GST Act authorities who have to proceed in the matter. And the Honorable High Court had quashed the letter which was issued by the DGGI authority, whereby all the proceedings got transferred to itself and they were to proceed in the matter. So that was the basic idea behind this 62B. The circular of October 2018 has been interpreted in this, and subsequent letter clarification given by the board in June 21, perhaps June 21 or 22, that has also been considered in the judgment. And it has been laid to rest insofar as Punjab Haryana High Court is concerned, that in case the state authorities have proceeded first on a subject matter, the central authorities will hold their hands, and in case the central authorities have already proceeded in the matter, then the state authorities would hold their hands. So this was the judgment of Stalwart. With this, my deliberation on all these four judgments comes to an end, and we can take up the questions. Akriti, in case you have anything to add, you can add, please.
No, so I was dealing with the refund aspect of it.
All right. So, Ashwini ji, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. We can take up the questions. I think a lot of people are have.
Neha ji, kindly take up the questions.
हाँ जी सर,
जिनके हैंड रेज करवाने हैं या क्यूए में तो दो ही हैं.
यस सर, क्यूएनए में दो हैं, उतनी देर हैंड रेज हो जाएंगे, बाकी मैं क्यूएनए में तब तक पूछ लेती हूँ. सर, प्राची जी कह रहे हैं, इफ एन एम्बुलेंस इज हायर्ड बाय अ कंपनी फॉर इट्स फैक्ट्री फॉर ट्रांसपोर्ट ऑफ एम्प्लॉइज टू हॉस्पिटल इफ नीडेड, will it be covered under mega exemption or will it be treated as renting of motor vehicle and RCM provisions would apply?
I think I would be the last person to answer this. But this is not something which comes
जी से
every
कोई
day.
litigation related ही क्वेश्चन पूछो, वो that will be better. बाकी
आखिर
अशोक गुप्ता जी बैठे हैं, सर को
हाँ,
रिक्वेस्ट कर लो कि वो जो मतलब प्रोसीजरल क्वेश्चन है वो अगर डेलिब्रेट कर दे पत्र
It
सर.
will be exempted from patient to hospital. This activity will be exempted, not hiring a vehicle.
थैंक यू. मूविंग ऑन सर, विजय सर एक और लिटिगेटिव मैटर पे क्वेश्चन पूछ रहे हैं. He is saying, sir, why courts demand conclusive proof of intent for extended 5-year scrutiny period? Is it not ignoring Section 74's mandate to tackle sophisticated evasion?
Well, Subramanian sir, I think invocation of extended period under 74, of course, now that's has been done away with 74 capital A. But for the past period, if we see the difference between 73 and 74, there is only difference of word with regard to fraudulent intention, the misrepresentation, and third is the suppression. So in case a person is being alleged to have actually indulged into all these things or one of these things, only then 74 can be invoked. The courts are asking for the conclusive intent for the reason that unfortunately the show cause notices do not reflect any malafide intent of a person. We have seen the cases where 74 has been invoked merely for the reason that 73 period has gone. the same party is being issued the notices under 73 for the same issue, but for which the period has expired, they are being issued notices under 74. Secondly, where there is a question of revenue neutrality, 74 is being invoked. There are the cases where the PSUs are involved, where the 74 is being invoked. So when the intention to evade tax does not arise, the legislature mandate is very clear that you have to issue a notice within the framework of 73, that will be 3 years less 3 months, and have to conclude the proceeding. In case you go beyond that, then the self-assessed returns have to be accepted as it is, even if there is some kind of difference of opinion between the SSC and the revenue.
So there's an additional question of Piyush Ji on this matter. Can Section 122 be invoked with follow procedure of Section 74?
I think he wants to ask if Section 74 122 notice can be issued along with 174 or not, if I'm
Probably, sir.
So I think yes, in case 122 penalties are to be imposed which are not overlapping with 74, then yes, while issuing the notice under 74, 122 notice can also be issued, and that can be taken to a logical end. In case there are certain offenses which are not covered under 74 penalty, then yes, it can be taken up. Why not?
If your question is not answered, please raise your hand. पीयूष जी ने सर एक कमेंट भी ओशन फ्रेट रिलेटेड कुछ दिया हुआ है इन द कमेंट सेक्शन दैट ओशन फ्रेट पे एपेलेट ने रिजेक्ट कर दिया 1 day डिले पे रिफंड इज डिनाइड एज टैक्स वाज पेड अंडर प्रोटेस्ट ऑन ओशन फ्रेट.
Just a second. In the chat, there he has mentioned.
Yeah, sir. I don't think there's a question, sir. I think it's a comment more around it. But Piyush Manchanda ji, if you have a question around ocean freight, please put it in the Q&A box or raise your hand. Sir, Anthony ji is requesting for the detailed judgments for all the members.
I'll
If
share.
you
I'll
would be,
share.
yeah,
Akriti,
if you would be kind enough to share, तो हम उसको resources में डाल देंगे with all the other presentations.
I'll share. Akriti, if you can do that, please.
Yes,
Got a
yes, sir.
question. We have another question from Mr. Gaurav Mehra.
Yes, sir. I'll read it out for you. Company had applied for refund under option with payment. Sir, ये हमने question answer किया है पहला question ही. Gaurav Mehra sir, were you not there? We answered this question.
Yes. Yes. We have already answered this, I think.
Shall we move on, sir?
Yes.
All right. Sir, our question box is empty so far.
All
And
right.
I would request the members if they have questions तो वो put up कर सकते हैं. Sir, would you like to take up any other litigation thing that for the questions?
Well, I think there are a lot of other issues which are arising. 9610, the export issue, which Akriti had touched upon. The Honorable Kerala High Court was the first to actually uh, declare that 9610 is bad in law, as it does not meet the requirements of Section 16. And also the Honorable Gujarat High Court has now echoed the same sentiment. Litigation with respect to that is pending in the Punjab Haryana High Court. Stay has been granted. So I think this 9610 had been one of the very good litigations which we have fought on an issue, which reflects as to how a person should go about litigating in GST. You know, when these 96, we had seen that a lot of amendments had been made. Right from beginning, some were retrospective, some were prospective, and then there were clarifications. So there was some exchange of words insofar as the amendments were made. People were the exporters. I would say that they are the ones who are actually contributing a lot. They were actually taken for a ride when they were bombarded with these notices. Then the customs had cleared the exports. They were granted the refund for the IGST which has been paid by them, to say that the refund which has been taken by you is incorrect, and that has to be returned back along with penalty and interest. And then the department also came out with some kind of scheme saying that in case you pay it up with interest, we will not impose penalties upon you and all those things. I think when these matters had come to me, we had deliberated a lot upon this. If you compare the language of Section 16 vis-a-vis 9610, Section 16 clearly provides that a person has a discretion to avail the refund in two situations. One is where he exports the goods through LUT and seek refund of the ITC. Two, where he exports the goods by paying the IGST. So these two discretions are available to him. And in case he does so, he can avail the refund, he can seek refund in terms of Section 54. That was the plain and simple reading of Section 16. Now, when you travel to Rule 96, somehow they provide that in case you are exporting the goods, in case you are exporting the goods against advance license, etc., you are not entitled to avail the benefit of paying the tax or seeking the refund in terms of by paying IGST. I think that was completely beyond the language of Section 16, where there was nothing of that sort of provided that you will not be entitled for refund in certain circumstances. What they, at the best, they could do was that refund is to be provided in certain guidelines had been to be framed. A person had to file certain documents. Thereafter, it would be processed. But in no manner they could have restricted the refund by saying that you, in such a scenario, you can only take the refund by applying under LUT and not by paying the IGST. So this was clearly contradictory to Section 16. And thereafter, an amendment also been made whereby the legislature had provided that they would now prescribe as to who can export the goods by way of IGST payment and who can export the goods through LUT. That provision thereafter had been implemented. So for the past period, it was very clear that the Rule 96 was in teeth of Section 16. So fortunately, we have succeeded in that litigation before various high courts. And I would say that if we dig little deep into the matter rather than following what the legislature has thrown upon us, we can definitely succeed in litigation in such like cases.
Thank you, sir. Piyush sir has a question. Piyush ji, kindly unmute yourself.
Hello.
Yes.
Piyush ji.
Good evening, sir.
Good
Sir,
evening.
actually, my client pay RCM on the ocean freight. That is unconstitutional. Now, can he claim the refund of that amount, which was paid under protest that time?
Yes, you can. Piyush ji, ideally, you should have actually filed a refund application. But even if you have not filed the refund application, I think you can pay that amount right now. You can seek refund of that amount by saying that whatever has been paid by me, that was a mistake of law. And the Supreme Court has now clarified that issue and refund should be given to me.
Sir,
Because
actually, they rejected my application, and after that, appeal also rejected on
Sir,
other grounds.
Sir, you have the option of going to the tribunal if it is constituted. Otherwise, you can approach the High Court. That's the only option.
Okay.
I think you better go to the High Court in this.
Okay. Thank you,
Right.
sir.
So there's one more question in the Q&A box.
Yes, ma'am.
Surajit ji is asking GST officer surprise inspection, but taxpayer absent. Then department officer signed witness as own officer for INS 02 order. Witness signed the portion showing two departmental officers' name, but signature column was blank. Is it a valid INS 02? Also, INS 02 documents seized.
Can't
Documents
understand.
table blank.
I can't,
Documents table was blank also in
sir,
that INS.
I can't understand the question properly, but what I gather from this is that perhaps there are certain procedural irregularities in the recording of proceedings of inspection carried out by the GST officers. In INS 02, they have signed on their own. Witnesses signed, they are saying it's their own officers have signed it. Well, you can always challenge the validity of such a search which has been conducted of the inspection. And if the court comes to conclusion that yes, the procedure has not been followed, then all the proceedings will be declared invalid. You can rely upon the Supreme Court judgment in Commissioner of Central Excise versus Magnum Steel. I think that will come to your help.
Surajit ji, if you still have an additional question, please raise your hand. Dear participants, Akriti ji has already put the landmark judgment PPT for you guys, so that if you want to read it later, you can. We have also shared the link for Voice of CA's social media, where you can always stay connected with us for the professional updates as well as our future programs. Ashwani sir, shall we conclude the proceedings for today?
हाँ नेहा, अच्छा बाकी क्वेश्चन तो कोई नहीं है अभी और?
नहीं सर, अभी पेंडिंग तो कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं रहेगा और हैंड रेज भी नहीं है।
चलो, थैंक यू वेरी मच संदीप जी। सॉरी, मतलब आज आपके प्रिय मित्र पीयूष जी तो वो कहीं पैसे कमाने में स्टक हो गए, और हमारे पास हमारे प्रिय मित्र बरनाला से पहुंच गए हैं, प्रदीप जी।
सर ये हमें बोनस मिल गया सर।
ये प्रदीप जी पहुंच गए हैं हमारे पास
जी जी
हैं।
जी।
अभी आपकी तारीफ और आपके फादर साहब की तारीफ ही सुन रहे थे इनसे कि ये मिलते
थैंक यू
रहते
सो
हैं ना,
मच
उसको
सर।
सच तो।
ये तो भाइयों का प्यार है सर।
तो थैंक यू वेरी मच सर फॉर द नाइस डेलिब्रेशन, और आपने इतना टाइम निकाला हमारे लिए। तो मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा, गौरव जी आप कनेक्टेड हैं? तो नेहा जी, नहीं तो आप ही काइंडली प्रपोज दी वोट ऑफ थैंक्स ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट एसोसिएशन एंड वॉइस ऑफ सीए, एंड वी विल
हाँ
रिकनेक्ट टुमारो विद आंचल कपूर जी। जितने भी मेंबर हमारे साथ हैं तो वो भी नोट करा दें कि 5th डे विल बी ऑन टर्नओवर। बेसिकली दिस इज ए स्पेशल सेशन, आप इसको अकेला टर्नओवर मत समझना जो कल वाला सेशन है। इट विल बी डिफरेंट काइंड कि हर इंडस्ट्री में क्या चीज टैक्सेबल है, क्या एग्जम्प्ट है, क्या टर्नओवर का पार्ट ही नहीं बननी। तो ये बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है कि आज की डेट में कि अगर कोई चीज एग्जम्प्ट है लेकिन टर्नओवर का पार्ट है, फिर भी आपको नंबर लेना पड़ेगा। लेकिन वो कोई चीज टर्नओवर का पार्ट ही नहीं बननी, तो वो ये सारी चीजें हम इंडस्ट्री वाइज बताएंगे कि रियल स्टेट में क्या है, हॉस्पिटल इंडस्ट्री में क्या है, जहाँ मतलब एज ए चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट क्या चीज इंक्लूड होनी है, क्या नहीं होनी, जहाँ फिर मतलब आपका ट्रैवल एजेंट में क्या एग्जम्प्ट टर्नओवर है, ये ऐसी हर इंडस्ट्री वाइज विद एग्जांपल्स आपको बताएंगे। तो कल हमारा सेशन टर्नओवर के स्पेसिफिक रहेगा, फोकस इंडस्ट्री वाइज कहाँ कहाँ पे क्या चीज एग्जाम्प्ट, टैक्सेबल और नॉन टर्नओवर है। तो थैंक यू वेरी मच। तो मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा नेहा जी से टू प्रपोज फॉर्मल वोट ऑफ थैंक्स।
हाँ जी सर, फॉर्मल वोट ऑफ थैंक्स प्रपोज करने से पहले मैं परमिशन चाहूंगी, एक क्वेश्चन और आ गया आलोक सर का इन द Q&A बॉक्स। सर, आलोक सर पूछ रहे हैं, कंपनी हैड अप्लाइड फॉर रिफंड अंडर ऑप्शन ऑफ विदाउट पेमेंट ऑफ GST अंडर LUT एंड supply was to SEZ unit. Department had rejected the refund on account of that. Taxpayer fails to produce SEZ documents and issued RFD 06. Company has given the undertaking to department not to go into appeal and file PMT 03. After giving so many letters, department has not provided GST ITC credit in the credit ledger. Sir, ये भी तो हमने आंसर कर दिया ना? What are the options available to company in this case? सर आप
संदीप जी
म्यूट पे
म्यूट
हैं।
पे हैं सर।
The options available to the assessee are that he can go to the High Court and seek recredit of his ITC. I think under Rule 90 he is entitled for it. Somehow department has not been following that in many cases. He can always go to the High Court under 226 and seek redressal of his grievance. That's very simple.
सर, सूरजीत सर एक एडिशनल क्वेश्चन पूछ रहे हैं INS वाले क्वेश्चन में, दैट इज appellate authority accepting this challenge?
Well, accept करने का तो मुझे पता नहीं है, but you should definitely take up this point of your grounds. The appellate authority, at the level of appellate authority, when you will proceed to this tribunal or maybe to the High Court, then in that scenario you may succeed. But in case you don't take up this point at this appellate level, then you would be not entitled to take up this point at the higher level as well. So therefore, it is
Sir,
very, very important that you take up this point.
So one more question is there from Vaibhav ji. Company has manufactured certain tools on behalf of customer and sold the same to customer at 18%. Customer provided given tools on RGP only for their product manufacturing. But GST department is asking why not pay 28% because end product is 28%.
Company manufactured certain tools on behalf of customers.
Vaibhav ji, kindly raise your hand.
What would be the meaning of RGP?
Sir, it is like that we are in the automobile industry. In that case, this customer give us some purchase order to manufacture or buy some tools from outside. We sometimes we manufacture, sometimes we buy from outside, and we bill to customer. as per their PO properly, raised 18% invoices along that. But department is telling that, and the customer sending us this back to us for to manufacture their product. Department asking when your end product is 28%. If it is amortized, if he customer give you, if you manufacture this product and use your own, the customer will give you this value in the sales price. Then it will be 28%. Then why you are not charging 28% on the tools?
Vaibhav ji, I think you are the job worker, if I am correct.
No sir, I'm not your worker. हम लोग टीवीएस के लिए ऑटोमोबाइल कंपोनेंट बनाते हैं. उसमें
जी
क्या है कि वो हमें एक ऑर्डर देते हैं, कोई भी नई
ठीक है.
कोई नया प्रोडक्ट आता है उसके लिए, वो कहते हैं
जी
ये आप ये टूल कुछ बना लो या खरीद लो हमारे ब्याह पे, हमने आपको पीओ दे दिया. उस
ठीक
पीओ
है.
पे 18% का लगाते हैं, हमने 18% बिलिंग भी कर दी उनको. अब
ठीक
होता
है.
क्या है कि वो टूल्स हमारे पास ही रह जाते हैं, क्योंकि हमने
बिल्कुल
टूल
ठीक
ऑर्डर
है.
सर्टिफिकेट या वो एक आरजीबी दे देते हैं. तो हम
बिल्कुल
कहते
ठीक
हैं
है.
ठीक है जी, हम आपके लिए बता रहे हैं स्पेसिफिक डे. अब डिपार्टमेंट ये कहता है कि आपको इस पे 28% जीएसटी चार्ज करना चाहिए, ना कि 18%, क्योंकि ये गुड्स आपके पास रह गए. हमने उन्हें ये बताया कि ये जो आइटम है ये कस्टमर की आइटम है, जब भी वो मांगेगा, जब भी उसका प्रोडक्ट खत्म चेंज होगा तो वो हमारे से वापस ले लेगा. पर डिपार्टमेंट इंसिस्ट कर रहा है नहीं, आप इसे 28% पे ही बिलिंग कीजिए.
सर आई थिंक आप लिटिगेट कर सकते हो सर, इसमें कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. यू कैन कैरी ऑन विद 18%. 28% is not that's not correct view.
थैंक यू सर, थैंक यू, दैट्स आई वांट टू नो. थैंक यू.
All right, sir. Thank you, Vaibhavji. So to put a formal end to the session today, thank you, Sandeep sir. Thank you, Akriti, for
Thank you, sir.
yes,
प्रदीप
for
जी आप भी थैंक यू करो.
थैंक यू सर, थैक यू.
Thank you, Pradeep. Thank you.
थैंक यू
So-
गुलजाब.
yes.
अंकल जी ठीक है जी?
हाँ जी सब बढ़िया सर.
चलो फाइनल आके जाऊंगा, नेक्स्ट वीक आऊंगा.
Most welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
For all your feedback and all answering all the questions for our participants. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope कि आप Voice of CA के प्लेटफॉर्म में हर साल, हर बार, हर कोर्स में हमें ज्वाइन करेंगे. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
We shall now close.